Hey there, welcome. My name is Jessica Buchanan, and I'm a New York Times bestselling author, professional speaker, and founder of Soul Speak Press, a non traditional publishing company created for women who've been through something, now they know something, and they can teach us something. In Her Words is a podcast designed to support aspiring memoir authors on their writing and publishing journey. It's hard work, this writing and publishing stuff, and I want to empower you with encouragement and information so you can keep sharing your truth. So grab your coffee, your notebook, find a quiet space, and let's dive in. Well, hi there, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of In Her Words. I'm so excited to be here with one of our newly released authors. If you're watching this, you can see this beautiful book, The Year of Sarah, From Heartbroken, Happy, and the Long Distance in Between, written by Sarah DeBlock. I just adore the cover of this book, first of all, Sarah, and the story is just so great. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your experience here in Her Words.
Thank you. I'm so excited and I absolutely love the cover too.
It's just so pretty. It's so pretty, and it's just like there's so much depth to it, and you can keep looking, and it's like, oh, it's such a great concept. You totally nailed it with your inspo. But take us back to like the very beginning. When did you decide that you wanted to write a book? And I mean, typically, I don't want to like harp on this too much, but you're kind of young to write a memoir, at least from our experience. I feel like the women that come to us, maybe you're like my age or a little bit older. And so when I first met you, I was like, oh wow, she's so young. And so tell me more about your story and just why you decided to write.
Oh, that's so fun to know because I didn't know you had that thought.
Hmm.
So, honestly, I never really imagined in my lifetime that I would write a book, especially with like being in such a background of STEM and math and science my whole life. But I am on a yoga journey and I have a yoga guru. And when I was going through my long distance relationship, she really felt I should share my story and help others understand what codependency is, what a healthy relationship can look like, what's possible, and that there can be so much benefit as well to a long distance relationship. And she actually originally suggested I blog about it. And I just didn't get into that. But eventually she said, you really should share your story, like consider writing a book. And for some reason that just clicked and I was like, you know what, I am going to try and write this book. And so it was really actually suggested to me, which is very unusual.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how long did you spend writing the manuscript until you came to us?
It had been about 2.5 years, but I wouldn't say I wrote it like straight for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
There would
Uh,
be months where I wouldn't, and then months where I'd have a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, which I think is pretty like normal, right? I mean, it's so interesting too because I don't think people understand like how much goes into actually writing a manuscript and the length of time and energy that it takes because you just go back over it and over it and over it again.
Yes, and it also is really helpful to do it over a long period of time because then the thoughts and the concepts you're writing about are on your mind in daily life and more memories will surface or something will happen like in current day, which reminds you of the lesson from the past. And so I actually think it's really helpful to take a longer amount of time to
Mhm.
really hash out like the story.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. So, what would you say like the hardest part of this writing journey was, other than living through it?
Yes. I would say the hardest part was really how to organize the stories, like all the memories is what I mean by stories, because there were a lot of lessons, there were a lot of events and situations, and I knew I didn't really want to just write it in chronological order. I wanted to, I don't think being more artistic's exactly what it was, but I just thought the story would be a little more enhanced if it just wasn't in chronological order. But then you get to like, okay, I told this, but I forgot to introduce this. Like when you start to shuffle the story, it's like, what
Yeah.
does the reader know? What does the reader not know? And honestly, that was working with you and Soul Speak Press that helped me to be able to decipher what the flow should be and how
Yeah.
to put it
Fill
together.
in those plot holes really, right? Because I mean, I think sometimes we forget that like nonfiction still has a plot and it has characters that need to be developed. And, that's not just for fiction writing. And I also think it's interesting too, because I think a lot of people either think they're on two sides of the spectrum. They think it's either like impossible to write a book, or they think how hard can it be?
Mm.
And where were you on that spectrum when you started this journey?
I thought it was going to be hard.
Okay.
I actually thought I'm just going to try to write it.
hmm
And if I can't, then, I'll let it go and no big deal. And I said, if I start writing it and I feel I can, then I'm going to go all the way. And I knew from the get-go that I wanted professionals to help me at the end. Like I wanted to see what I could do writing it. But especially since like I'm not a writer by trade or have done that, my whole life, I knew that I wanted to find help. I didn't know exactly how or what that would be at the
Mhm.
beginning, but that was my plan.
Okay, interesting. Um, I love how you're like, I was either gonna let it go or I was gonna go all the way. But I wasn't gonna just like let it linger for years and years and years and years.
Yes. Yeah.
And why did you have that like that certitude to be able to do that?
I think because it was something like that I have never done before.
hmm
And I am someone who normally finishes. Like if I say I'm going to do something, I finish it.
Okay.
That is my personality.
Yeah.
In this case, I was like, I've never written something longer than a 30-page essay. I was required to in college. And
Right,
so
right.
this was more like, well, this is an experiment to see if I really, and not just can I write it, but also like, is there as much of a story there as I thought? Like I was
Yeah.
open to the fact that maybe I start writing this and it's not a book, maybe it turns into something else, but that was why it was so new, it was so out of the box for me that I
Mm.
wanted to give myself that grace of let's just be fully curious and see what is possible.
I love that. What a great way to approach a project like this, because I always say it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. Um, but just like keeping a space, a mindset of grace, I think is really important. I know for one, I felt like I learned a lot through the lessons that you shared and that's one of the great things about my job is that I get to read all of this really inspiring work before the world gets to see it. How did you like it's hard to like explain, I think, for myself, like how like I know how I structure an outline when I'm working on my own manuscripts. Like how did you decide what lessons you wanted to develop and stories you wanted to tell?
I think I decided it based on how much impact it made in my own life.
Mm,
So I really thought back to what were the pivotal moments in my life where I grew as a person
yeah.
or that my perspective wildly shifted.
hmm
And I wanted to share those not from a preachy standpoint, but from here's what helped me and here's
Yeah.
what really opened my world and hoping that perhaps it would open someone else's world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that that's, I just actually for the last 2 hours was teaching a memoir writing course. And I had forgotten that we have these templates that we give out to our memoir writing students, where you can like outline those pivotal moments, those scenes that you want to develop. And it is true. Like that is what we're always like combing through, I think as writers too, right? We're always combing through our lives looking for those nuggets, looking for those little truths that have impacted us that we can share and offer up as contribution. What are some of what's a reader going to expect from reading your book?
I believe that a reader can expect to learn that, happiness has to be a choice
Mm,
and that, throughout life there's going to be obstacles, but how do we continue to believe that joy is possible and to believe that the obstacles that come into our life are going to ultimately bring us to a better place of fulfillment, contentment, And also seeing what does it look like to soul search and
Mm-hmm.
accept when your life does not unfold how you would like it to unfold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what do you do? This is, I think, a common theme too for memoirists. Like, how do you, there were some parts where you had to write about some people in your life, and were committed to being authentic and transparent, but also wanted to be but also protective of them. So how did you come to terms with that? And how do you feel about that now that it's out in the world?
It's a great question. That's always the hardest part of
I
memoir writing.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. And I'm lucky that I don't think my husband had ever any issue with the book.
Mhm.
And, because obviously he's in it
Yeah,
about our relationship. And
yeah.
so I was fortunate that I never had to really worry about that portion. But I mean, honestly, there's a few parts of the book that still give me some concern of how will people read it and how will they
Okay.
interpret it. But a few parts, I changed names.
Yeah.
And then for other parts, I brought that section to the person and we actually like talked through it and had
Mm,
like full on conversations about it before it was published to make sure that, we were good and also that they knew what was coming out and
okay.
be there.
Was that a hard conversation to have?
It was very hard, but I think in the end, it was actually great for that relationship with those people. Like I actually think in that way it brought more healing than I was expecting to those areas. And so that was a like a little glimmer.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah,
What has been the most surprising part of this journey for you, this book writing journey?
it's a great question. I think how long it is.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
don't know, I always in my head envisioned it so long, but it's more that you write and that's a long process, and you edit and that's a long process, then actually creating the book, like the cover and the formatting, and then once the book's published, the actual marketing. I know this is just like everyone's like, okay, everyone knows that, but it's when you're really in it and moving through all those steps, you really do see like the perseverance that it takes.
yeah. It's really hard, like all of it, you
Yeah,
know? And I think it's hard to do well, if I may say, they say the average book sells 200 copies in its lifetime.
even lower than I knew.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think you're a plus star student. So clearly you're gonna want to like go over that. What's some advice you could give to newly published authors in terms of like, because you're doing a really great job of marketing and getting out there in the community. Probably I would say part of that has to do with the fact that you run a studio and a wellness space. So you've been doing the marketing and the community driven connecting for a while. I think probably uh, those effects are the same whether you're selling a book or you're trying to bring in yoga students. But tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and what's working and what's not working. We're always curious to hear from authors.
Yeah, I mean, I would say start building your network as early as possible.
Yeah.
Um, I'm grateful how things unfolded in my life because I was working on opening a yoga studio and the book at the same time. And there was a portion in my life where I was like, what should be first? What should I focus on first? In the end, I just kind of did both simultaneously. But if I had really like understood what it takes to publish a book, I would have known right away you should do the yoga studio first because the bigger your network is, the easier it is going to be to advertise your book and publish. So always be speaking with people, meeting new people, maybe connecting with writers and also book lovers in your community. Get on social, do whatever you can to make connections and in a genuine way. That's what really matters. Like, don't go networking just for a purpose of selling a book or a goal. It's like just genuinely get to know people, and then you'll have a network for when you do publish a book. And it's just also when it's a memoir, my advice would be to really believe in the message you're selling because it's hard to ask someone to buy a book about you. It can
Hmm.
feel like, and you wonder, do they think I'm like really obsessed with myself or,
Yeah.
or what are people thinking? But it's not about you, it's about like the lessons in
Yeah.
the book that we're focusing on. And so if it feels like, how am I supposed to market myself or talk about myself, just bring it back to the lessons and bring it back to the message. And
Hmm.
don't be afraid to promote yourself. I think
Yeah.
sometimes that's maybe a harder thing to learn than creating the network.
Yeah. Agreed. I think that that's like like the number one challenge I see new authors or just authors in general facing. Um, it is, I do it all day long, so I've gotten over it. But I remember being like almost embarrassed with my first book talking about it and, you know, trying to sell it and like going into bookstores and, my manager was like, go sign copies or whatever. And I was like, no, that feels so weird and so conspicuous. And so I get it, but now I'm over it. But um what are you like, what's next? What are you excited about for this book?
Yeah, well, since it's so newly released, I'm very excited to hear from people what they actually think and
Yeah.
what resonates with them. And I'm truly hoping people share with me after they read
Yeah.
um, what happened for them, what did they learn. And I have had a few people already like reference lessons in it, and that's been really awesome. But next is I have a few book signings in town, as well as going to some women's circles to discuss the book. And I even am going to go to a few yoga studios, not locally, and do like reading and journaling and create a workshop around it.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And
Love that.
so I've got a few ideas in the works, and my, goal now is to continue to brainstorm how else can I get the word out, or who else can I collaborate with, and where does it make sense to collaborate? And so I'm excited to see what connections are made.
Mhm.
But ultimately, I do hope to hear from people if something like supported them in their life, because that was really my whole goal all
Yeah.
along.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so interesting too from like an author branding perspective. You have like this built-in market or niche, right? With the story really focusing in on yoga as your transformational journey as part of your guide in that way. So, I think it's just awesome to think outside the bookstore box, because bookstores are hard to get into. And so the fact that you're like pursuing yoga studios outside of your area, widening your network, like these are all things that authors need to be doing nowadays in order to, you can't just like have your book on Amazon or available through Barnes and Noble and expect people to find it. You got to work hard for people's attention and their you know basically their allegiance to you in terms of like buying your book and spending time reading it. Like we have to work really really hard because there's so many awesome stories out there, so I'm glad to hear that you're moving in that direction. What would you say to someone who's considering a similar path that you walked?
I would say to believe in yourself and have the courage to take the risk and
Mm.
write the story. I have heard from many people that they've considered writing a memoir or they have a story since doing this, and that has been really fulfilling too, to hear from people who I would have never guessed want to write a story. And I think what I am hearing is limiting a lot of people is fear of how people perceive their story, which I completely understand because that was a fear I had too. How will it be judged? How will it be, will they see it through the same lens as what I mean for it to be through my words? And I would say just trust that if you think there's a story you need to tell, that there's someone out there who needs to hear it, and that everyone deserves to tell their story and to go for it.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think it is about like human beings that compels us to tell our stories?
Mm. Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and I think the storytelling is like one of the most ancient ways we've connected with one another. And I think at the like core of our soul, the number one thing we want is to be connected and to feel connection. And I have always personally gravitated to reading memoirs, actually. And I believe that they help us feel less alone. They help us remember that everyone's going through hard things, even if it's not the same hard thing that we are, and that there are people who've come before us who have overcome extremely hard things, and they bring inspiration and hope
Yeah.
to us.
What are some of your favorite memoirs that you read?
Oh man, that's
I
a
was like on the spot, right?
on the
I should have
spot.
prepared you. I wasn't thinking, I was just like, oh, I wonder what some of your favorite memoirs are.
Well, I really liked Educated.
Yeah.
I know that's a really famous one, but just to hear how she like didn't even have a birth certificate, or
Mm.
any formal schooling, and found a way,
Yeah.
all the way to go to a PhD, was just really
Right.
an incredible story.
Yeah.
Man, I have like a whole shelf of memoirs, but I also, completely separate and different than that was like Shoe Dog, hearing how like Nike
Mm.
was created
Yep.
was really fascinating.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
know
And I
that.
just read one that was called Into the Magic Shop. That was really
Oh, yes. I love him. What's his name? Dr. Do you remember what his name is?
getting his name. That's terrible. But
I've been listening to that book.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so he's like the number one neurosurgeon in I like the US or the world. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's really good.
yeah. And like the way he was, was raised so poor,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
honestly had zero chance in terms of like what we would perceive as, from a grade perspective and all this to get into med school. But it was his mindset. He was
Yeah.
like, I know I will become a doctor, and I know this can happen, and it's an incredible story.
Yeah, agreed. I know. I think that's what I love so much about Memoir too, is like when I'm down and out and I'm feeling like uninspired or, tempted to give into despair. I learn from you guys, my authors, all the time. I do. I like go back and think through the manuscripts that I've been working on and the lessons that you've learned, and I apply those to my life. I think of other, books that I've read where people have overcome, and it's just like it really, really does give me strength because I'm like, you know what? If like they can get through that, then I can get through this. And I've always pulled on stories in the hardest, deepest, darkest moments of my life. So I'm just, grateful that we got you to this point and that the book was a bestseller in the category of yoga, which like is phenomenal. And I'm just really, really happy for you, Sarah, and I'm grateful to have gotten to work with you and support you in this process.
Yeah, I am so grateful I found Soul Speak Press,
Mm.
and it was really fun working with you. And you just have a natural empathy to understand people, but also a natural ability to draw out the story. And for me, with it being a memoir, the number one thing you did was help me understand like what parts of me I hadn't put on paper. I think sometimes you're so much yourself that you don't even see like the quality that you haven't like told the reader about.
Yeah,
And that's something that was very valuable.
awesome. Well, you need fresh perspective and fresh eyes to say, hey, what about this? And how do you feel about that? And what do you think about this? And I'm not good at a lot of things, but I am good at asking questions. So it has served me well, and hopefully it continues to with our authors. I'm curious, I don't remember, how did you find Soul Speak Press?
Instagram basically said,
Oh,
you might know
Instagram
this
for the
person.
win. Instagram for the win. I tell you what, I mean, we love to hate him, we hate to love him, and but here we are. And it turns out, actually, for anybody listening, Sarah and I are basically neighbors. We're like
Yeah.
in like nearby neighborhoods. So Instagram brought us together, but we're over here in the burbs of DC. So Sarah, we just wish you all the best, and we're here, we're your publishing family. So whatever you need, how can people reach out to you and connect with you and buy your book?
So, well, for buying the book, it is on all online platforms. Or if you're local in Alexandria, you can come to Soma Yoga Healing Center. And I'm on Instagram, Soma Yoga ALX or Sarah DeBlock _heals. And would love for you to go on somayogahealing.com as well and see more of the yoga and Ayurveda offerings. And of course, if anyone's in Alexandria or the Nova area, you can even come in person and would love to meet you.
Yeah, go do a yoga class. I'm just waiting till I get my evenings back so that I can go to a class. Right now I'm still carting my kids around for activities. Okay, Sarah, thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to see how far this book travels.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
In Her Words is hosted by me, Jessica Buchanan, and is produced by Soul Speak Press, a non-traditional publishing house for women who are ready to tell their story. If you would like to know more about our submission process, I encourage you to check us out at www.soulspeakpress.com or follow us over on Instagram at soulspeakpress. We appreciate all your questions, and if you would like to leave us a review, we would be so grateful.